Okay, so we now have the keynote, and we have joining us on stage Ashwini Asokan, who is the founder and CEO of AI startup Mad Street Den. The company's retail vertical, View.ai, makes computer vision-based AI products for the retail industry. It promises intelligent retail automation, improving productivity and efficiency for the product, marketing and merchandising teams in the retail industry around the globe. She and her team of 60 give the power of sight and learning to machines, teaming them to see and experience the world like we humans do. Working across San Francisco and Chennai, her team has been known to build some of the most cutting-edge AI tech and products, redefining the future of retail. Let's give you a little bit of an insight into who she is. She's been giving the power of sight and learning to machines. She's redefining the future of tech with the AI and products. She's a catalyst. She's a live wire. She's impatient, and she's audacious. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for the keynote speaker and set stage for her to join us.
Welcome to the circus.
Stage is all yours.
Hello. Hi. I thought a lot last night about what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to keep this very casual. I think these are the best spaces for conversation, especially such small, cozy settings lend themselves very well to conversation. They lend themselves very well to much more realistic topics, things that are very close to everyday life, to every one of us in this room. And you know, as someone coming from an AI background, how many of you here are in tech? Can you put your hand up? Okay, about like a fourth of you, okay. How many of you here are stay-at-home moms? And not, okay, okay. How many of you here are small, medium business folks in certain kinds of, all right, there's still a whole lot of you left there, so what do the rest of you do? Are you students? Are there students in the room? There are students in the room. Okay. Hello. Yes, that's right. How many of you are artists or work from home? Or okay, that's a sizable lot of you there. Okay, great. As somebody who works in tech, who works in the field of artificial intelligence, I thought one thing that might be an interesting thing for me to talk about today is actually how and why your life and your career is essentially one big experiment in pattern recognition. And that's what my conversation today is going to be about, right? I'm going to talk a lot about, I don't know what, I guess we have about half an hour or more. I'm going to talk a lot about building career, and I'm going to broadly talk about it from my own experience, but also by splitting it into, 4 different stages, right? Just a little bit about me, for those of you that don't know, I've been known to be very polarizing. I have some very strong opinions about a lot of things, and I tend to largely polarize audiences. There are people that absolutely like me and people that absolutely hate me. This is usually very binary in its approach. I want to start off by saying anything associated with career for me, and for a lot of the women that work with me, people keep saying it's very hard to find women in tech. It's very hard. It's a pipeline problem. It's a diversity problem. It's a hiring problem. It's a skilling problem. There's always a problem associated with why there are not enough women in tech. We're about 70 plus employees in my startup. We have companies across, offices across Chennai, San Francisco, and Seattle, and Bangalore. About 54% of the company is women, right? And we are into hardcore AI, right? Like computer vision. It's not a skill to begin with that you can find everywhere across the globe. Are split in both the technical as well as non-technical teams. There are a lot of technical women. I think our computer vision team alone has more women than men. as of now, right? So it's not hard. It's not a hard problem. And I would broadly summarize my probably 17 plus years of experience in the tech industry with a handful of words, right? No offense to the performer from this morning and the words associated with the performance. It was a beautiful performance. But I think, words, my experience is probably one that summarizes my goal, which is never to be associated with the words delicate, with the words soft, with the words, I don't know, people keep asking for grace as a woman, right? Why are you not graceful? Like, what is grace, right? Or, when all of us say, I had a career, and then I got married. When was the last time you heard any guy dictate his past professional experience as, I had a career, and then I got married, right? For me, my life is the exact opposite of that, right? I keep asking, how many people associate the word delicate or grace with Carnegie? Be like Carnegie, hashtag, right? Be like fire, right? Be like Kali. There are so many other ways I think we can describe the whole lot of us in this room, and especially given we are here in the context of our careers, in the context of growth, in the context of talent, in the context of skill, I'd say the better set of words we can try and associate ourselves is hashtag be like Carnegie, right? And let's make that kind of the starting point for this conversation today. I'm going to spend the first part of my talk on about, let's see how many, like 3 to 4 stories that I'm going to walk you through. And then I'm going to tell you my kind of takeaways and a little bit of gyan, if I may, on what I believe are 4 steps, essentially, to reinventing your career or reinventing yourself, right? And this happens in cycles. You'll find yourself doing these 4 steps over and over and over again at different phases of your career. So it's not 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're suddenly 60 years old. No. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 when you're 20. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 when you're 30. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 when you're about 38. 1, 2, 3, 4 when you're about 45. So you've got to go through that cycle at every single stage. And that's kind of what I'm going to walk you through. So I started my career at Intel in Portland, Oregon. I am a product designer by background. I had a master's degree in design and product design when I took over my first job. I was 22. And I remember almost all my designer friends, they went and joined Google or IDEO Design or Twitter or, there was this early 2000s, there's a rise of social media, the rise of different types of companies, and this didn't interest me at all. I had the privilege of going to a grad school like Carnegie Mellon. It is the privilege, and it's nothing less than a privilege. You have to be, it's very hard financially, it's very hard across so many, things related to life and how you're brought up, right? So it's definitely a privilege. And I managed to graduate out of this design program, and I sent my resume to this really famous anthropologist. How many of you know what anthropology is? It's the study of people. It's the study of systems. It's the study of larger cultural systems, right? And I sent just really randomly at Intel, right? None of my peers, none of my friends in school, at grad school, understood why I would do this. They were like, what is Intel? Intel is like a silicon hardware company. Like, what are you as a product designer going to go and do in a company like this, right? I had a website with my portfolio, everything that a normal, that any other product designer would have. And she went in for an interview, spent a whole day in Portland, got hired, and there was an entirely new group being started inside of Intel. Intel was making the transition from being a silicon hardware company to being a platform company, right? This is a massive change. For those of you that are in tech over here, it's not easy for a company to just go from, manufacturing silicon and chips to suddenly becoming a platform company. It's a massive shift, right? The company was trying to figure out how to get into the smart TV business, the smartphone business, the automobile business, retail business. There's multiple different types of platform businesses and groups that were being formed. And I got hired into the digital home group, okay? The first thing I did, I walked into the office, my day one, and it was a sea of gray cubes, like any other tech company that you can think of, right? One cube, you can stand at the beginning of a floor, and you will see a sea of gray cubes, all right? Since then, they've gone, there's a lot more color in there since I've left the company. But back in early 2000, like any other technology company, right? A sea of gray cubes. And here I am, I'm a designer who has no idea what I'm going to do here or why I'm going to be here. I remember my first project when I was, on the first day that I was introduced to, we were basically going to start going around the globe and trying to understand people's relationships with their TV, right? Why is internet TV going to happen? This was like early 2000s, right? How will internet and TV come together? What kind of products should the company be thinking about? What is the future of this platform, essentially? And there was basically a team of highly interdisciplinary design, anthropologists, HCI people that were coming together to go and do research, right? To try and understand where is this industry going to head and what should technology companies be thinking about, right? First day at work, I go in there, I don't relate to any of this. What is a designer supposed to do? I know cutting, the equivalent of those boards, cutters and sketches and prototypes and 3D, that was my world, right? And so I walked up to my manager and said, can we get somebody from the office operations to kind of clean up my cube? And he said, why? And I said, I want space on the floor. And this guy was, of course, super weirded out. He was like, why would you need floor space, right? There's a cube in there, there's a desk in there, and there's walls, gray walls. And I said, no, I can't work. Like, we have to prepare for the upcoming research. Like, I need space. Like, get somebody to clean my desk for me. And so he brought in somebody and took all my desk and everything out. It was basically, and then I brought in papers, sketches, sketch pens, everything else that designer does, and I sat myself on the floor. People were creeped out. Right? People were like, some weirdo who looks 22, who obviously, and I set up my office space on the floor, and of the 5th floor, if I remember right, and this is the headquarters, right? And I was allowed to do my set of experiments, prepare for my research in whatever way that was required. And I started, my first research was actually at Kansas City. I don't want to say more, but I remember going into all of these people's homes, and we were in the middle of these interviews, and in one such interview, there was this one guy who just started a rant with my partner about how Indians are taking away our jobs, and we should not be letting Indians into the country, and it just turned to be like a complete rant, very clearly directed at me, right? So my partner very politely turned to me, and she said, I think you should go sit in the car. It's getting a little, I don't know if we're going to get through this interview. It's getting a bit. And so I said, fine. Halfway through the interview, I got up and I went inside. I sat down and I realized, well, there's really nothing much I can do. If this is how the interviews are going to go, then there's really nothing much. And we were in heartland of the US, all right? So it's not surprising that this was my first experience in the industry. I'd never worked before then, right? Not the very best of experiences, but it gave a massive opportunity for me to learn. I went back and I told the anthropologist and my manager, Genevieve Bell, I told her, like, I don't understand. What am I supposed to do? You guys have ethnographers. There are already anthropologists in the team. Like, why am I even here? And she looked at me and said, ask yourself why I hired you. Why don't you go back and think about who you are and why you were hired into this position? Now, this is a story that comes to me a lot as somebody who hires extensively now in my startup. People often forget when they start their career that they have a certain set of strengths. Everybody has a certain set of skills. Everyone has a certain set of strengths and weaknesses and a certain set of way of working. Everyone has something. But when you start a journey, you forget that. You're trying so hard to fit in to where you were hired, to the industry that's pulling you in, that you've completely forgotten what it is that you bring to the table, right? And I say this all the time to the people I hire. A few months into the job, and they're upset. They're like, MSD, which is my startup, is highly competitive. Imagine you have people who are like buzzing with energy, building AI, cutting edge stuff, and sometimes people come in and say, I feel so lost. Like, I don't know how to keep up. Like, everybody seems to know exactly what they're doing. There's so much energy. This happens all the time. And it happens with every new hire, right? Everyone coming into the organization. And the first thing I tell themselves is ask yourself why you were hired. If you getting into roles which are completely predefined, where there's no space for you, there's only space for the role, there is no you. Any employer or job that requires you to leave you at the door before you take over that role is probably a bad one. If you can't bring your strengths and your skills, and that one statement completely changed the way I basically approached research for those first few years of my life at Intel. I basically realized, well, I was hired because I was a designer, which meant I could start building prototypes and taking them to this research. Nobody told me I can't do that. I could start building design research tools. I could start taking completely different approaches to research. Nobody said that research has to happen only by anthropologists. There's a reason there's a multidisciplinary team over here, right? So for me, it was about retreating and asking myself, given my design background, what can I bring to the table when we go in and do all these extensive research? It was such a aha moment for me because I was completely lost. And you will be, right? At every stage of your career, you will find yourself being completely lost and as you invent and reinvent yourself. The second story that I'm basically going to talk about is I've been there about 2+ years, 3 years. And this team was basically going to Japan and South Korea and to multiple different places across Asia, which is where all the TV manufacturers were, right? All the famous TV brands that you can think of. Now, I was 26, if I remember right, and my boss decided that I was ready. I was ready to accompany these senior VPs and execs to meet these TV manufacturers and the GMs of these companies, where this whole idea of a product roadmap, how will people experience the future of TV? Mock-ups of what the future of TV could look like, right? Our team was building a lot of that stuff. And I'd clearly proven myself in 3 years, where she felt comfortable enough to put me on a flight to Japan with really senior people, right? Like 8 senior people in the company and me, right? This is not a story that ends well. I might as well just tell you up front, right? This is not a story that ends well. I get on a flight. I go to Japan. The airlines lost my baggage. We're talking about Japan, where everybody looks like they walked off the ramp. Right? Like everybody looks like they walked off the ramp. They're suited up, booted up. They're just put together, like on the road. Everybody's put together. Like everyone's put together in Tokyo, right? And everyone's walking with a purpose. They're all going somewhere to achieve something, right? It's such an incredibly powered place, this city. I land on a Sunday evening at, I don't remember the name of the hotel, but it's one of those hotels that keep getting advertised on Emirates when you fly in on that, there's Mandarin, one of those Mandarin Orientals or whatever, right? Of course, a really high-end hotel. And I land there with capris and a T-shirt. It is still Sunday night. We're totally fine. And I land. I figure out that I'm not going to get my luggage. And so basically at around 9:30 in the night on a Sunday, I'm out in the Ginza district trying to find formal wear, right? Guess what? All the shops were closed. 9:30. Everything was closed. Sunday night, not a single store open. So I come back around 11 o'clock, and I'm super upset. I don't know what to do. And so I decide to get a massage. So I called in to the receptionist. I was like, I just got to find a way to calm myself down. I can't be like, shitting my pants. I got to figure this out. And I called somebody, and then it was fantastic. It was like a spa thing that happened at like midnight. And I was like, all right, I got this. I'm going to get this together tomorrow. Next day morning, I show up downstairs at the reception with the entire team. Everybody's suited up and booted up. They're all middle-aged people, like experts, executives. And I'm there with my capris and my T-shirt. It was blue. And it was embarrassing. They were pissed off. They were upset. Many of them tried to tell me not to show up, not to come. But I was like, what could go wrong, right? It's my dress. Like, how can my dress have such a big impact in a meeting? And so I showed up to one of the biggest, I'm not going to name names, the biggest manufacturers of TV. They also had a Walkman, just a heads up, right? And I walk into the parking lot of the corporate headquarters of this company, and the entire so everything is robotic. You get off the car, like there's a massive thing that the whole ground moves up, and it's moved. The parking is robotic. Everything is like, it's completely automated, right? Already I'm beginning to go, maybe this was a bad idea. Maybe I should not have shown up. And we go in, the general manager of the TV department comes in, he receives everybody, we go into the meeting room, and I start the presentation off with the vision for the future of TV, smart TVs, what's going to happen, where we see our product roadmap. We have a whole story around this TV and stuff around this, right? And then everybody else who's actually there to do business and to sell, as opposed to my job, which was to sell the vision of where this particular category of products could head at some point. The meeting goes on for 45 minutes, and it goes really badly. All right? It goes very badly. And then basically, the GM of this particular company decides at the end of the meeting to walk up to me, to handshake, and he starts talking about the future of TV, completely ignoring the sale, the business. I'd like it if you guys didn't tweet the story, just a heads up, right? So but it's, comes up, handshakes, says a lot of nice things. And then he says, why don't I walk you out? The rest of the management is still sitting there. Everybody gets up awkwardly, everybody's trying to leave, and this guy basically talks to me, ignoring everybody else. And he's obviously, it was very clear, right? It was one of those things which was, he was trying to make a statement to the rest of the team that things were not going to work out. But at the same time, it was so many mixed emotions, because on one hand, at that time, I was still 26, don't forget, right? I'm reading this as, oh my God, this guy got my vision. Like, he did it. Like, I nailed the product roadmap. Like, this is all about me, right? And it took me a while. I had no clue. That entire situation was all about me. Right? I was like, I did it, and I was like probably the most impressive in the room, when in a sense he was trying to wave everybody else off, right? Which was the main part of the meeting. And I go back, and then there's a series of more OEM and TV meetings, company meetings, and I skipped a couple of them. I went shopping, got myself clothes, and basically showed up for a series of meetings after that. I go back to the US to a hate mail that's gone viral. Basically, someone sent a mail to one of the execs within the organization saying, we send children now to meetings where we're trying to, you can imagine, right? This is large corporate organization, larger than anything you can ever see, right? And here is this woman who has figured out that somebody on her team, irrespective of age, irrespective of gender, irrespective of anything, my boss just thought it was the right thing to do. She was like, here's someone who can speak about the roadmap and the future in ways that a lot of other people can't, and she made that decision, and she stood by it. And yet, for somebody that, in that stage of their career, to come back and to suddenly, and I didn't even know about it. For like 3 weeks, I didn't know about the hate mail. It was viral. I was the only clueless one going, I nailed it, right? I nailed this meeting, I nailed this sale, like it's gonna happen one way or the other. And then 3 weeks later, I very accidentally find out about the hate mail that had gone viral. And it was awful. It was devastating for me to sit up and go, and I actually got access to the actual email as well, right? And it was such a blow to me to think, and it was also an interesting time, because you can also understand in a company which is so technical, which is all about manufacturing, you suddenly have what people call the soft sciences, right? Anything that's the humanities, anything that's design is all soft sciences. These are all the softer skills that are there in the industry. Like, what are you guys doing in this company, right? And yet, here was this wonderful person, my boss, who was trying to build an army right in the middle of an organization. It's almost like, there are lots of analogies to Hunger Games. I'm trying hard to avoid going there. But it's kind of like that, right? It's the whole entire community of people that are doing something that is so fundamentally different, but so fundamental to a new business of any kind, right? And I took it as a fantastic opportunity, completely devastated, but it helps to be clueless sometimes. And I definitely look back at my 26-year-old self going, holy shit, I was clueless. Because I was like, fine, if you think the problem with this whole Japan trip was me not knowing how to do sales and business development, all right, I'll get on it. And so around that time is when I started associating myself with the business development teams, with the sales teams quietly, with the teams that were not necessarily within the reach of teams like us, right? But I slowly, steadily started finding connections with people outside, across the entire company. Intel's a beautiful company to work for. It is an absolutely amazing company to work for because you can talk to anyone, you can go form relationships with anyone, you can learn in ways like you can't learn anywhere else. Like, and I absolutely owe the fact that I am a startup, I am a CEO, I am a founder today of an AI startup to that journey that I had at that company, right? And I found a way to go form relationships, form connections with people that were far out of my league, right? That were far out of my set of skills. And it completely changed who I was, right? How did it change who I was? So the year 2009, I was very pregnant with my firstborn, with my first child. And I was out in the field doing a lot of research on iPads. We'd moved on to the next set of platforms around tablets. We had a series of prototypes. Our team was much bigger than it ever was by this time. And we were basically trying to decide what kind of a tablet strategy we were going to go with, what kind of a what would that product roadmap look like. And I remember the last research, the last interview that I was doing and design research session I was doing, it was the evening before I popped my first child, right? It was a Friday evening, and I was out there in the field in a house that was one of the peak hills of San Francisco, had to go all the way up. And I remember when I finished that interview, that lady opened a garage and gave me like a crib and the swing, and I got a bunch. She just loaded my car with her kids who were like 5 or 6, and she just wanted to give away a bunch of things. And I just loaded my car and drove down and basically called my partner on Saturday morning and said, I guess we're not going to do analysis. Guess who's going to the hospital? And that was me. I went in, and that night I had my firstborn, Aditi, and I remember I was on my maternity leave lasted 5 weeks. My husband said, we can't put up with you anymore, get out. Like, we just can't deal with you. My husband had just completed, he was a postdoctoral fellow at Stanford. He's a neuroscientist, and he was a neuromorphic engineer, and he was just trying to take a break from academia and figure out what he wanted to do with his life. We'd already decided he was not going to be a professor. And so it was a great time. He was like, I'm going to be home. Like, we just need you to get out. For everybody's sanity, you need to get out of the house. So by week 5, week 6, I was out again. And when I went back to work, I basically found out there had been a massive reorganization in the company, right? Meaning, like, our 10-member team had become a 100-person team. We had computer vision scientists in this team now, data scientists in this team now, all kinds of people that had become a part of this 100-person team, right? It went from multidisciplinary to multidisciplinary, right? A massive 120-person organization with people with all kinds of backgrounds. So I went back in, I saw my boss and went like, what does this mean to me, right? Like, what does this mean to, like, what am I going to do? Everybody was insecure, right? It was all of a sudden you have such a big organization. So I went in and said, well, this is probably one of the best things that could have happened because it now gives me an opportunity. There's all this design, research, product strategy I did. Then I did all the product design and taking all of that and applying it in the form of what kind of roadmaps and stuff needs to be done from a product perspective. Then I learned about sales and business development and what customers really wanted in the ecosystem. And I said, here is a fabulous point in the journey of this of my career where there's all of these AI people, very similar to my husband, right? And I was like, maybe we get to start building AI products right now. Right? So for me, it was all about saying, okay, the situation on the ground has changed. There's a whole lot of new people that you can learn from. And there's a massive opportunity staring at my face around AI. Right? And I went in and pitched and said, for the next 3 years, I want to drive the building of mobile products using AI. And I went and pitched week 6, after Aditya had had a full deck done saying this is the strategy, this is how this team would approach it, we would find ways to go build computer vision products like this, data science products like this, put together a whole story, went in, and guess what? I got a promotion, right? I was a nobody. And I ended up getting this, probably the biggest promotion that I got. And coming out of maternity, like you don't hear that often. Try working for a female boss. So how are you going to breastfeed your child? How are you going to take care? Shouldn't you really be available for your kids? None of that shit, right? We had a nursing room at Intel. We had many nursing rooms at Intel. And I would, middle of a meeting, every 2 hours, I would get up from the middle of the meeting and say, hey guys, I'll call you from the nursing room. And I would go down to the nursing room, put the pump on, get on a call, talk to my colleagues on floor number 5. Every 2 hours, right? And my house, again, from a privilege perspective, every step of the way, I'm going to have to lay this privilege at the door, right? We were privileged enough to be able to make a choice to work two blocks down from my office. So we moved to a place 2 blocks from the Intel campus. So every couple of hours, I could go home, check on the child. Anand was there. The nanny was there. Be like, okay, everybody's happy, possibly feed the kid a couple of times, and then get back to work, right? It worked out. And I guarantee you, my boss not one day asked me, does your child miss you? Are you being a good parent? None of that, right? And it makes such a difference to not have that kind of an energy around you just looming over your shoulder all the time, right? Why did I say all these stories? And how do these stories relate to the 4 things that I wanted to talk about? The first thing, and I mentioned step 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Step 1 is about working hard. It is about working yourself down to your bone, right? And that's not, and by that, I do not mean, are you working 24 hours a day? That is not. The direct correlation between working hard, especially in India, and I'm going to stereotype the hell out of this conversation right now because I've been hiring for more than 5 years here, and I've also worked in the US for greater than 10 years, and I can tell you that in India, we think that if we put in 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. of work, we're going somewhere in life. Right? It's incredible how our correlation between working hard and number of hours put in, it boggles the mind, right? It's crazy how we've made that connection here, right? And you're so tired. How does one think when you're so tired? How do you think? How do you do anything when you're so tired, right? So the question, when I say work hard, I mean work hard at building the right skills and becoming a domain expert of some kind. And that is step 1, right? I will also go on to make another wildly generalist statement. But again, from my experience of hiring, I have found that there is not enough emphasis that we all give for domain expertise. Oh, social media. Anybody can handle social media. Oh, please, she's just a social media person. He's just a digital marketer. How hard can it be like launching a few ads on Facebook? My nanny can do it, right? Like how, this is such a sweeping, whatever. And if you actually take a moment to go into these disciplines that we just left with our right hand and our left hand we dismiss, right? Oh, they're just that, they're just this. There are entire corporations that dominate our life that are in these spaces. Social media is not just a social media digital marketing person, whatever. She posts on Twitter. He runs ads on whatever. That's all. That's all they do. It's one of those things where it's extremely important to understand what are the characteristics of viral content. What is the basis of building communities? What are the fundamental ways in which people connect with each other? You could go on and on and on. If you look at it from a content writing perspective, how is a product marketer different from a someone who's trying to build a social community? Everybody, it's not, and a lot of us approach it in the form of a copywriting exercise. Everybody writes copy, right? Add a bunch of words, put in a thing. So, and the way these interviews happen as well, when people come and talk, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. Okay, you can do a lot of things. And clearly you're going to stay from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. But that is not the point of this exercise. The point of this exercise is to ask yourself, are you developing the right skills? Are you becoming a domain expert of some kind? Meaning it's not just about doing, it's about the outcome of your doing, right? And that is something that is extensively, I think, undervalued in our, and I can only talk about this from a perspective of someone who's built a technology company, so that's my limited experience with reference to hiring and the kind of companies that I've built. But it's very limited in the sense of there's a lot of focus on the what. There's not a lot of focus on the why. There's no focus on the how. Towards what, why are you doing this? Why have you chosen this channel over this channel to put your content out in? Who are you reaching out to? And when you go and look up online, which comes back to the fundamental thing about this stage one, which is just working hard and learning and developing that kind of domain expertise, there is so much content out there in the world across. This is something that I said at the Twitter chat as well, right? There's so much Udemy, HubSpot. I could go on and on and on, right? It doesn't matter which field you pick. People have broken it down into step 1, do this. Step 2, learn this. Step 3, use this. There is nothing that you don't have access to. So if you're someone that has just taken a career break, or you're finding the time and creating the time for yourself to learn something new, ask yourself, what are you learning? How are you going about that learning? What kind of spaces are you in? Are you having conversations with other people that are having the same journey? And the internet is filled with communities that talk to each other about this stuff, right? People who are sharing stuff, Reddit, right? Slack. Use the tools that are available to you to be able to go out there and build those skills and that domain expertise, right? There is no, and that's the beauty in so many ways, I think, of some of the people that I worked with during that journey, my corporate journey. It's just people who never dismissed something as, it's just that, right? And that is the reason why you find fantastic product marketers, fantastic social media marketers. These people just didn't come in saying, it's just that. They became the expert at what they did. They figured out the mechanisms in which social media works, in which communities work, and they figured out how to make use of that, right? And that is the start of that journey, or step 1, which is getting absolute domain expertise in whatever it is that you do, that you make yourself indispensable by becoming that expert. People keep coming to you. They want to know, can you tell me more? Can you tell me more? Something is working. People have not figured out what this is, but you have. And that is step 1. Right? Step 2 is the next thing, which is working smart. And I'm going to go back into a lot of those broadly painted stereotypes that I just mentioned, but I'm constantly amazed at how a lot of my cousins, a lot of my family, friends, since I've come back, people that tell me, oh, but it takes me, I leave home at 8:30 in the morning. They're all working with different types of They come back at 9:30, and you ask them, okay, so you can be out for as long as you want, or work for as long. I am a total workaholic. I am absolutely unashamed about it, unabashed about it. And at the same time, I spend a ton load of time with my children in many interesting different ways. I've also mentioned in the past that I bring my children to work a lot. And right in the middle of a work session, I'll be like, okay, I'm going to take a 20-minute break. I'm going to go sit with them, and I'll play Spot It in the middle of the office. Or like Uno in the middle of the office. And you'll be surprised. 10 people will join the Uno game, and then all of a sudden, 1 p.m. turned into an Uno session in the office, right? There's so many ways to create quality time. I'm unabashed, so I'm not saying it's bad. All I'm saying is we need to figure out how to work smart as a people, right? And working smart, I'll give you an example. Again, something very close to my heart right now, because particularly in my company, we've figured out the tech. We're coming at it from the other perspective. We've figured out tech, we've figured out product. We are now figuring out distribution. We're now figuring out channels of engagement. And so it's something that's really dear to my heart, given the stage of the company that we have right now, right? If you're a marketer, if you're a digital marketer, right? And you are trying to, how many of you are into marketing here in this? Okay, so quite a few of you, okay. So, and if you're trying to figure out leads, where do I go find leads? Where do I go find people who are interested in this topic? And you're going to go, and let's say you've gone through step 1 right now. You know how these systems work. You are a domain expert, no matter what. You're either into fashion, you're into art, you're into whatever it is that you're into. And let's just assume we're past step 1, right? And we're looking into step 2, which is really about figuring out, now that I know all this, how am I going to work smart, right? How am I going to be smart about where I'm going and the outcomes of the work that I'm putting out? Can I spend 1/10 the time on finding people that care about whatever it is that I'm selling or whatever it is that I'm putting out there? If I find a way to write a script that goes and automates and pulls up all the different types of email leads and profiles of the people and just scrape whatever channel it is to create a list of people that might be interested in what I do. You do it once, and this is something that we talk about all the time. If the stage 1 is about data collection, going back to my analogy about pattern recognition, it's all about understanding and accessing data. Step 2 is about learning to analyze that data, right? And if you're still going to be stuck in the face of, I'm going to LinkedIn to look up every person's email, their last name, their title, you're going to be spending the rest of your life doing this, trust me. There is no getting out of that cycle of looking for leads. Wherever it is, there's no getting out of data collection. You're still going to be stuck in that cycle of data collection. So ask yourself, how do you if you spend the time and the money or the resource, whatever that might be for you, in actually possibly automating that process so that somebody's giving you all that data, then you can actually spend the time analyzing that data. You can spend the time figuring out, you know what, doing all the pattern recognition that you should. You know what, these 100 people are this kind. They're probably not going to spend a lot of money on the product that I'm spending, but maybe these set of people will. And these set of people are also found on these other channels. And so you can spend all the time you want in actually sitting and analyzing that data and getting some set of outcomes, as opposed to still caught up in that cycle of data collection, right? We were giggling this morning, Shantiri and I. Shantiri works at Math Street Den. She's a product marketing person there. And she also has a fabulous newsletter that you guys should follow. I learned about ASMR. Anything that happens is my go-to person, right? She runs these sessions where she tells us not to be a noob. We were having this conversation where I said, step 2 is about not being a tool. And I don't mean that other kind of derogatory tool. I mean the kind of tool where I'm saying, AI is coming, and that is the reality of the story. If you are someone who is caught up in this cycle of manual, repetitive tasks that require no thinking, no creativity, trust me, those jobs are going to be automated. One way or the other, they're going to be automated. So ask yourselves as people who are building careers, what is the nature of your job? Does it allow you to focus on the creativity and the outcome and the building, or does it allow you to focus still on the data collection? And ask yourself which side of the coin, which side of that trajectory you are on, right? And it's important to not become a tool, which is software from 10 years ago, were merely tools that helped humans do a certain set of things. That is it. And but they didn't automate everything. You were using them to get something, manual, repetitive tasks. So I ask, and this is something that especially as stay-at-home women or women that are working from home, ask yourself, which side of these jobs are you on? Are you on 1 or are you on 2? If you are someone that is very seriously analyzing different types of data and making some conclusions that a machine can never make, it's your creativity, it's your ability to understand that domain that no machine can make for another 10 to 15 years, you're probably on the right side of that problem. But if you are stuck in 1, which all of us have to be, everybody has to get that domain expertise. You'll never get to 2 if you can't get past 1. So the question is, how soon do you get past 1 and into 2, right? And I'll tell you this, whenever I interview people, people talk about their journey with 1. It doesn't matter how old they are, and this is definitely a thing in India, right? I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, okay, great. That's a laundry list of things you can do. So what? Phase 2 is about answering the so what. So what? Are you someone who can think strategically about the fashion industry and as a result can drive a business in a particular way? That, and everything else is a tool, right? Everything you learned in step 1 is just a bunch of tools that you know how to use, but you don't want to be stuck in that if you're looking to grow your career. You want to move on to be able to think about a particular domain in a very strategic way. And for me, that came when I made that switch from product to adding on the business development and the sales part of it and the customer part of it in my journey, and to not sit back and go, there's no way for me to move forward. There is. There are lots of adjacent skills to what you do. There are lots of adjacent fields that will invariably help you understand where the value of what you do is. And if you can't think about it from an outcome perspective, you're going to be stuck in a zone where you're just collecting data. And that's going to mean nothing. You can be collecting data for the rest of your life. Right? That's how much data there is out there. And that's really the story of step 2. Right? Which brings me to the third one, which is, now that you've made yourself indispensable, and now that you've become someone who is asking for, and again, the end of this phase 2, I think, is also a lot about walking up there and asking for a place at the table, right? Because where you go next is all about credibility. This is how you get to stage 3, which is all about this credibility. You can go out there now and ask for positions, ask for a seat at the table at all kinds of places, because you have built a portfolio and you have a history of having proven value to whatever business or to whoever it is that you're providing value to. You now have a proven track record, which means you have credibility. And I think that is really what step 3 is all about, right? For me to be able to go back from maternity leave and to ask that position, ask for that thing, was really all about the fact that I have spent the last 6 years doing, analyzing, and helping form strategic opinions for a business. And I am now at this place where I think I can run a really large team to create a particular platform strategy and a product strategy, and this is why you should give me the job. Stage 3 is all about leveraging that credibility that you have built up, right? And it's also a lot about making yourself dispensable. We talk about this all the time in my company. If you've reached that point in that stage where no one can function without you, and you have become the unquestionable expert in that area, you got to figure out how to not be a roadblock, which is completely unlearning, which is getting out of the way and paying it forward. How are you going to bring a team of people who can get there? How do you train the people around you? How do you help them understand how to go through 1 and 2, right? We always tell the people who have absolutely achieved expertise of a certain kind in my company, we tell them, if you are indispensable, you're going to be fired. We never say that to people that are coming into the organization. We always tell them, make yourself indispensable. You've got to be someone who's just, who has such incredible domain expertise, and then figure out how to apply that in different forms across the business. And then you've got to figure out how to hand it forward. You can't make yourself like the single point, right? And trust me, companies that value you will be very happy when you step aside and let another 10 people join you for the ride, right? It's not about you at that point. It's like, I did it. No, it's not so much about you anymore. It's about the team that you're building and what you can leverage. And I always say this, right? I said this at the Twitter chat as well. Ultimate domination, which is absolutely a goal that I have for myself, Carnegie, be like Carnegie, is one of those things where I go, you have to get out of your own way, make space for other people. You got to retreat, build an army, and then strike 10x, punch at 10x your weight. And I specifically say this in the context of the comment that I had made 2 days ago about hearing a no. I am someone that is intimately familiar with no's, right? For the last 17 years, I've been told no. I've been told I don't belong. I've been told I don't look the part. I've been told I'm too South Indian. I've been told I've been too not Indian. I've been told just about anything. I've been too female, too not female, too aggressive, too soft. And I'm sure this is true for all of you in the room, right? In your own whatever way, it's been true for all of you. So none of that matters. And like I said, pick every no, put it in a little box, and I have an Arya Stark list. I just want to put it out there for anybody that's watching. I absolutely have a list like Arya Stark. And it's very important for me to open that box and look at all the different no's, right? It keeps you going. And that is really all about step 3, which is like take a step back, consolidate, and build an army. Because when you get to step 4, there is no other way out, right? Now, is this a linear story? Is this like, if I do 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4, guess what? I'm going to be one of the Ambanis. I don't know what that, like, I don't want to be an Ambani. But it's not a linear story. There are lots of us that don't even want this. So I'm sorry if this story is not relevant to the people that don't want 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Power to you. Show me 0 and 5 or whatever else that makes you tick. But my point is, this is not a serial approach. This is not a linear journey. And this is something that has to happen over and over and over again. You will have to do it in your 30s. You will have to do it in your late 30s. You will have to do it as you continue to change your path, your journey, and reinvent yourself, invent yourself over and over and over again. That's all I had for the day.
Thank you so much. Ashwini, actually, we started a trend at Bangalore to close each one of these with a little poem that I wrote as you spoke. So it just sort of brings in together everything that she said. So let me go through this quickly. Not soft, not delicate, no grace, thank you very much. Technology meets anthropology, marries platform and product design. Invent, reinvent, lose yourself and find and discover a new you. A clueless 26-year-old finding her way, or a feisty mom at the workplace. Work yourself down to the bone, work on being a domain expert. Find the patterns that connect the dots, driven by outcomes, learning new things. Work super smartly, leverage and weigh in. Don't be a tool and answer the so what questions. Demand your seat at the table, unlearn and pay it forward. Make teams, build an army, and fly. So, thank you so much for joining us here today and for giving us that wonderful keynote. This is from the SHEROES team to you. Thank you. Thank you so much.